thank you all for coming. So Rob's asked me to talk a little bit about my story, which I've always resisted to. So I'm going to tell you a story first. The story of Paul and how this character came across what I've always fondly called the ocean. In a sense, when I was growing up, I lived near the sea. So the sea was always a big part of my life. And so when my character started having experiences, so-called spiritual experiences at 15, and it became aware of this thing which was everything, I just called it the ocean, because this was almost 40 years ago, before Google and the internet and whatever. So I had no concept of non-duality, or I had no religious background or spiritual background. It was just something that happened out of the blue when I was playing football. Football was my passion, and I wanted to be a professional football player. And I had a chance to go to Cardiff City Football Club. But just before going, I was training at home in the back of my house, and I just had this sense to go and sit quietly. Don't know why. So I sat quietly, and then just out of the blue, my character was overwhelmed with such a deep sense of peace, and almost like a rapture and a brilliance, really. And that started off a period of about 18 months to 2 years, when my character had all sorts of spiritual experiences. And during all those experiences, the sense of Paul was changing, and my whole understanding or sense of time and space was changing. Again, at that time, I didn't have these sort of words. It was just what was happening. And I didn't tell anybody about them. Because even though some of them were very energetic and very powerful, there was a deep sense of peace and well-being underneath them all. So my character didn't tell my parents, because I thought, well, if I tell my parents, I don't know what to say to them, but they'll probably take me to a doctor. And they'd stick some drugs in me or something. So I just sat every time that I had that impulse to sit, and every time I sat, something else happened. And during that period, the character became aware of what I call the ocean. There was this something, this brilliance, which was in everything, which was the space between things, which was every name and form I was experiencing. But there's still a sense of a character here experiencing that. And that went on for months. And then, if I can say, that luminosity of everything just became like self-luminous, for want of a better word. And then there was no sense of someone there experiencing that luminosity, experiencing that ocean. There was just ocean, there was just life. There was just this utter stillness, which is appearing as everything, is appearing as time and space, and all the names and forms in it. And I just was like the character I was just playing in it, really, or it was just playing with me. Sometimes for the character, it felt like it was surfing a wave, or the wave was surfing it. But again, I had no understanding what was going on, but it was just fun. Although it feels strange, in a sense, my character lost everything, but it was good fun to lose everything, because with the loss of everything, there was just everything. Although that sounds a lot of what I'm going to speak about sounds like a contradiction, because what we're talking about is a little bit of a paradox, well, at least to the mind. Because in many ways, what this is too simple to put into words. it just became like a love affair for my character, but for no one. And at that time, somebody told me that there was the biggest bookshop in the world in London, because I live in a very sleepy place. There was no bookshops or anything, called Foyle's Bookshop. So this is almost 40 years ago. So I jumped on a train and came up to London and tried to find out if anybody had written about this ocean, because I hadn't spoken to anybody or anything. And when I was there, I can't remember, my memory isn't great. Somebody told me there was another bookshop in London called Watkins, which has been there since 1893 or 1894. So I went tottering over there, and there's got it downstairs, and I found some books called the Upanishads, which comes from the Vedantic tradition within India. And the end of the Upanishads is called the Advaita Vedanta, which in that there are some, for my character, it was the clearest expression of this that I'd ever come across in my short search in Foyle's Bookshop or in Watkins. And like in any books, there's loads of what I call sweet nonsense, really. But in it, there's also quite clear words pointing to this ocean. And so I thought, bloody hell, this has been written about possibly thousands of years ago. And at the back of the book was a little sticker saying published by the Vedanta Society in Bourne-End in Buckinghamshire. So I thought, oh, I'll go there. So I went home and came up straight back up again on the train and knocked on the door. And I said, could I speak to somebody? And they set me up to this guy who was in an orange robe, and he was the boss there, and he was what they call a sannyasin, a monk. So that's the first time I was able to speak to anybody. And he just said, well, something very natural has happened to your body and to your character, and it might be good for you to come and stay here for a little while. And I thought, oh, great. So I went back home again and sorted some things out, and I left a note on my kitchen table for my parents. Gone to this address, don't worry, I'm fine. So they freaked out. But I left, so I just ran off back to this monastery and spent the next, in total, about 5 years there, really, having a whale of a time. Because the monk there was a medical doctor before he became a monk. And so he was involved in getting the Dalai Lama, and the Dalai Lama fled Tibet when he was young. And so he knew all these characters. So he used to organise back then all these interreligious dialogues from different world religions, so where they could all come together and speak behind closed doors and in secret. And so I was fortunate as this country boy to be able to sit and just chat with the Dalai Lama and bishops and archbishops and all these characters. And it was there that I realised the stories that we make up, basically. Because even though I was speaking to all these characters, over those years there was possibly only one, possibly two characters that you could speak up to about this ocean, because those characters are so into their stories of they had the truth and whatever. I'll tell you the story about the one character. He was a hermit, actually a Christian hermit, and he had been sent to be, there was this interreligious thing about mysticism, and they'd sent him out of his hermitage to come, the Vatican had, to this interreligious dialogue. And he was Italian, and his English wasn't very good, but I was looking after him. And they wheeled him out in a way, because he had all these visions of Christ and so forth. So they thought, oh, here's a guy that knows about mysticism. But on the last night, because I would be chatting away about the ocean, and he said, Paul. And I went over, he was sat on the chair by the side of his bed, I was bringing him some tea and things. And he said, I know what you're speaking about. He said, one day when I was praying, Christ appeared to me and he walked into my body and we both disappeared. And it was just this. It was just this ocean. And that was the only character. And he said it in such a childlike way that I thought, that was so sweet. So that's a very concise, but there were so many stories in the monastery, and when I was, because I live near the beach, there were so many experiences. So is that a good enough story for my story?
Tell us a couple more stories about some of the things that happened from the time when you had the first awakening in the back garden. You said that you had a number of sort of spiritual experiences over the next 18 months. Can you remember any of those?
I forget a lot of them, but there were loads. There was all sorts of things of seeing things before they happened. Right. There was, you could see the energetic makeup of everything. There were just wonderful perfumes. And there was very, I don't know, people talk about the Kundalini, but stuff goes off or went off in this body. So there was massive amounts of energy going off, in which for a period of time there was a sense of someone there, but it was it was extended in space and time in a sense, and there was just a little body in the middle. But there was still a sense of a pole that was extended through space-time, with the body in the middle going about practicing its football. But I've never talked about them really, because when I talked about them years ago, especially in religious settings, people think they're important, and they get hooked into the experiences, and they think they have a significance, and they don't. There's no more significant than sipping your cup of coffee. It's the same thing. So I've tended to say not talk about them. But so you've broken a habit. So I left the monastery then, and I lived like a hermit for a while. There's another big story, but I won't go into that as well, of another character I met who lived in the mountains. But we'll have a cup of coffee and I'll chat to you about that one. Non-duality is a funny thing, because it's an utter paradox, because it can't be spoken about, because it's not a something, it's not an objective something that you can possess or hold. It's the only thing in this room. It is this everything and no thing. This word I often use is neverything. So the only thing is this energetic appearance, this no thing appearing as everything. And it's an impossibility to talk directly about it. It can't be put into words. But paradoxically, it is the words. There's no correct questions in this. There's no correct answers. There's no true questions. There's no true answers in that sense. The question is its own answer. In a way, when I talk about the ocean, I'm talking about, it's like the ocean's water, it's like the wetness of the water. That the only thing that appears is this wetness, this juiciness. This, for my character, it's like a love affair with what is, with what simply is. And because this ocean is everything, and it's free, and it's, I often say it feels like it's quite mischievous. It can also appear to be separate from itself. It can appear to be a something which is separate from the ocean, a bit like a wave on an ocean. The wave both is and isn't separate, and the me sense both is and isn't separate. But that can't be known by the something. It is only known when that something falls away. And there's no, that falling away can't be instigated, because it doesn't matter what form that wetness takes. It doesn't matter whether the character appears to jump into the ocean with purpose and meaning, or whether the character accidentally trips over and falls into the water, or whether the character gets picked up and thrown into the water. It just gets absolutely wet. It gets absolutely saturated in this wetness of this ocean. And then it's seen, paradoxically, that there was never a separate something called a me that was having a life. There was just life. There was just this wetness timelessly appearing. And it's the only thing in this room. It is this room. It appears as all of time and space, because the me is, the funny thing about the me and time and space, they're all the same, the words for the same thing, because when the sense of the me falls away, the sense of time and space falls away. The sense of a story in time falls away. In that sense, everything falls away. And then you're just left with this wordless, juicy wetness of what the ocean is. And this cannot be got, because it already is. There's no something here that can get something called non-duality. There is no someone that can get non-duality, because it's already the case. It's already the love affair. So there can be no, in that sense, it's like a non-action. There's no doing of non-duality. Conceptually, in a way, non-duality is just another story. And in many ways, just another story that's being sold in the marketplace of seeking. Because it isn't a something. There is just this, and this is everything. It's not a this and a that. It's just this everything. It is this and it is that. It is the me and it is you. It is here and it is there. It is us and it is them. It is utter presence and utter absence. It is form and it is formless. It is me-ness and it is beingness. It's creation and its destruction. It's life and its death. It's everything. You can't get closer to everything, and there's nothing to get closer to everything, and there's nothing to get further away from everything. is just everything. Just this juice, just this wetness of what is. And it's annoying, I apologise, and paradoxical, but it's a fucking love affair, but for no one. Which is a pisser. I apologise. So, in that sense, non-duality isn't, for the conceptual mind, is an utter frustration. Because it can't do anything with it. Because it's not a thing, it's not a something. So for the me, in a sense, I know you've come here to talk about non-duality, but it's an utter waste of time. Because it can't be used, it's of no benefit to the sense of the separate self. And what's paradoxical about the separate self is that there's no one doing it. There's no separate someone that's doing the me. It's just an energetic appearance. It's like a delusion, a veil. There's nothing in there that's creating the sense of the me, or instigating it, or supporting it. There's nothing in there that can get rid of the sense of me. It's just what appears to happen. In that sense, for me, the sense of being separate, both, it's an energetic appearance of both that's real and unreal at the same time. Again, utterly frustrating to the conceptual mind. You can't do anything with non-duality. It's of no, for the sense of the separate me, it's absolutely no use whatsoever. Because in a sense, for the sense of the me, because the me feels separate. It's the old Christian analogy of the fall from paradise. It always feels like something's missing. And it depends on the sensitivity in the character. Some characters are quite cool. And they're reasonably happy with their lives. And their cigarettes. And their coffees. But for some characters, that's not enough. And they go off and seek, I don't know, sex, drugs and rock and roll. Or something called non-duality, or God, or enlightenment. But the possibility is that non-duality is not about anything. It's not about... Because it's not in relationship to anything. It doesn't see anything else. It doesn't know anything else. And seeing nothing else, it is prior to the movement in the sense of the me, because the me is always an energy that lives somewhere else. It's never just in this. It always lives in a movement. The me is like a movement of energy that is always somewhere else in the past, in the future, in a concept called now. Crazy. Or in a here or a there. It's always in that movement to be somewhere else. It's always dissatisfied with what is. And it's natural in a way, because the me, as I said, is time and is space. So it's born of time in that sense. And this wetness, this ocean, is boundless and timeless. So in that sense, the time and the timeless can never meet. They never meet each other. But paradoxically, they're one and the same thing. So in one sense, for the me, this is an utter crazy, crazy, frustrating mystery. But for this character, that wetness, that ocean, it's blatantly obvious that it's the only thing in this room. It's all the names and forms in this room. It is time and space. It is cause and effect. It's just a love affair. And in a way, when you can't put it into, as soon as you put it into a word, it's lost in that sense. Because it's too simple to put into words. Fuck, it's frustrating. So most of you have been to non-duality talks, so you've heard all this before. So there's nothing that non-duality is. There's nothing you can get from it. But because the me thinks it's a something, it's always looking for another something to make itself feel whole, to make itself feel complete. So it goes round and around and around in a circle. But that circle doesn't go anywhere because it's in time. It's always into the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. But the next thing is always separate from it. So it's always not satisfying. In many ways, the best way to speak about non-duality is just to stay silent. At least that's what my character feels sometimes. Because the mind, because it's a conceptual mind, you'll always try to make something of non-duality, that it is a something. But it's not a something. It's not an anything. And it's got nothing to do, it's in relation to no thing, so it's got nothing to do with religion. It's got nothing to do with spirituality. It's got nothing to do with non-duality. It's got nothing to do with any conceptual idea. It's got nothing to do with awakening. It's got nothing to do with anything. And it's actually got nothing to do with anything that anybody's ever said in the past, in any book you've read, or what anybody will ever say in the future. It won't be it. Because it's not in the words, it's not in the conceptual mind. And yet it is the words, it's the wetness in the words. It's the wetness in the feeling, in the body, in the time, in the space. It's everything. It's a mad, wild, crazy, nonsensical. It has no significance. It's not on a journey anywhere. It's just the speaking of words. It's the sound of words. It's the hearing of words. It's that which is hearing those words. It is in the sight, it's in what is seen, it's in that which is seeing. You can't get away from it. Because it is everything. You can't get closer to it and you can't get further away from it. If you all turned down and looked at the back of the room, it's still, that's it. Or if we all go out to the pub, that's it. It's the coffee cup that's picked up. It's the breath that's going through the nostrils. It's everything. But again, the paradox that this everything is simultaneously no thing. It's no thing appearing to be time and space and names and forms and stories and births and deaths and meanings. But however it appears, it's still that same wetness. It's that same ocean singing its song of silence. This is just utter silence, singing. It's what's appearing now. It's what's appearing through the five senses, what I often call the sensible senses. And it's also what's appearing through those crazy senses of thoughts and feelings, where most of the noise and craziness happens. Silence is singing this song for no reason, for no purpose, because it's already complete and it's already free. And because it's utterly unconditional, there is no significance to anything that happens. The me has utterly no significance. Because this doesn't see a me. It doesn't see an other. So it knows no other. It knows no separate something called a me. So the whole thing of birth and death, of beginning and end, all the dualities just collapse and fall away as being utterly meaningless, as being both real and unreal at the same time. And it's not serious. Fuck's sake, don't get serious about this. It's not at all. You can't seriously get this. Sorry. The possibility is there's just this. There's just life. Just this stillness dancing. There is nothing to get. And there's no one, no separate something to get a separate something else. There's nothing wrong in that appearance, but the possibility is that there's no separate something in this room. It's just what's in this room. It's just the room. It's just sounds, sensations. There's just silence, roaring. It's like, it's me, it's me, it's me. It's the only sound in this room. And it's not going anywhere. This is the ocean, this is freedom, appearing as whatever. Appearing as cameras, shoes, people, stories, cups of tea, flooring, ceilings. It's all the same ocean, it's all that same wetness. Appearing as all these things. For my character, it's just becoming like a it's just a love affair, but for no one. I could go on talking a lot of blabber, but you've heard all this before. Is there any questions? Or I'll just keep on talking. Because there's no something in my words. There's not something in there to get. For my character, it's just like a song. It doesn't have a something in it. There's not a something which is non-dual in it. There's nothing to get. It's just a song about the love of just this.
So is there an urge to sing that song?
It just sings.
Because I think I have managed to listen to it in a way, but it doesn't matter whether it's listened or not, I guess. Isn't it?
It's the only thing in the room. It's the only song that timelessly sings. And in that sense, it's like boundlessness. Here's boundlessness. And there's again, it's not in the words. There's that wetness happens. That love affair happens. And that's not a something. It can't be made into an objective something. As soon as we try to do that, it's whatever you can think about conceptually, it's not it. It's more simple than words.
So it's not even a song as such.
Well, it is and it isn't. This is a complete paradox. In that sense, it's enough a mystery for the conceptual mind. And because it's the only thing, it's mischievous, because it's the only thing in the room, it's not seen in that sense. Because the something, because it thinks it's a something in time and space, it just looks for another something in time and space. It can't do anything else, because it is time and space. The me is the movement of time and space. When that collapses, time and space collapse with it. And the sense of a story, the sense of a beginning and an end. All those dualities, in a sense, collapse. Although that is just a story as well, because nothing really collapses. That's the only way I can express it. Because there is no one that sees this. So there's nothing separate from this. And it's utterly unconditional. So it's already the case. So it can't be got, because it's already the case. It can't be lost, because it's already the case. But it's mischievous in the sense that because it is everything, and free and unconditional and mischievous, it can appear to be separate from itself. And for that energetic sense of a self, that is distinctly not satisfying for many characters, depending on the sensitivity in the character. So it feels it needs to find something, and then it's sold, it sells itself various things to go after to make itself feel whole again, until it gets exhausted. But again, there's no rules to this. As I said, the character can just be picked up and thrown into the water, or a big wave can come out and crash through the character and make it saturated in the ocean. These are all just stories, but there's no rules to this, because it already is the case. Before I came, Rob said, "Oh, can you give an introduction to non-duality?"
Oh, I believe I said.
Yeah. Well, no, you can't give an introduction to non-duality, because it isn't anything.
You talk about the limitation of words, but you've also talked about an awareness, and the words, arts, music, techniques, yoga, meditation, these are all tools that can bring us to that awareness, though, what you're doing now, you're bringing us into a state of awareness of the isness. So there is, I can't really explain what I'm trying to say, but
I know.
just words, for me, words and art and techniques, they're a way of getting into that isness, a way of realising that oneness, transcendence.
The possibility is that there's only oneness, and there's nothing there that can get closer to it or get into it. In that sense, the doing, again, this is just a story, okay, is almost like walking in the opposite direction to this, because it's that something that is always somewhere else. It's living in something else and not seeing what is. But again, there's no one doing that. There's no one telling the story of me. Me is the story. The different words for the same apparent energetic movement. So when the me collapses, the story collapses, and vice versa. And the whole sense of causation, and actually the whole sense of time and space.
But you can experience that, can't you? You've experienced that, your backyard moment, looking at the stars, the sublime, Wordsworth, like they experienced it.
There was a character there experiencing all those sorts of experiences. But what this isn't an experience. It isn't an awareness, in the sense that there's one thing aware of something else. This is not, it doesn't know another thing. It doesn't, it's prior to that movement, in that sense. It's prior to the appearance of a subject and an object. It's more simple than that. Perhaps I'm a romantic, but for my character, it's a fuck off love affair. But in this, whatever this is, however it appears, and whatever words you use, cappuccino, that's it. Honestly, cappuccino is fuck off boundlessness. Cappuccino in. Or thought in. It's just this. This is silence. Singing. It's always been just this. And it's known. It's not known by something. It's like, it's because the me is always living in something else, because this is so unconditional, it's so close, it's so intimate in a way, it's always overlooked. Because the me movement, the me energy is always in something else. Or the next talk I go to, the next book I read, the next lover I have, the next £1 million I earn, or the next bit of music I write. Because it feels it's a something, again, it's a something in time and space. It feels the answer is in time and space. Whereas the possibility is that what the seeking energy is looking for its own absence in a way. So it's looking for the end of seeking. So it's a bit screwed up, it's looking for its own death. It's quite mad in a way, this. And it's quite neutral in that sense. It's not personal, it's not impersonal. All these opposites just collapse. It's more juicy, more wet than that. It's literally this. This is everything. There's people, there's chairs, there's rooms, there's time, there's space. And it's known. It's that absence in the words that runs through the words. It's the wetness in the words. It's utter presence and utter absence simultaneously. So it's not about a getting of something. It's more like the loss of something. It's the loss of me. That's just a story as well, because the me is that ocean. Again, there's no separate something doing the me in. So the possibility is that there's no central something that has any control or has any, in that sense, free will and choice. It is just what happens. And it all, in a sense, comes out of that no thing, which just appears as everything, like this ocean of energy. That is time, is space. It is this, in the sound of these words. There's no true question or true answer. It's the juice in the question is the answer. And it's always known, but it's not known by the me. Because in that sense, time and timelessness can never meet, because they're one and the same thing. The everything and the no thing are one and the same thing. So in that sense, there's nothing right and there's nothing wrong. So if the character enjoys meditating, great. If the character enjoys going to the pub, great. One thing is more significant than the other. It's just the ocean meditating, or the ocean pubbing. It's all the lever. It's all that juice. It's all one crazy love affair for no reason. Because it's free, it's unconditional, it's complete, it's whole. It's not on a journey to wholeness or anything. Because this is difficult, but at the same time as everything happening, simultaneously nothing is happening. So whether it's a sitting here or a sitting in the pub or watching TV at home or having a fag, it is this. So in that sense, it's no big deal. It's very, in a way, very ordinary. But again, the funny thing about ordinary is that the ordinary is extraordinary. For the character, it finds it's a bit mad. It finds it falls in love with everything, in a sense. A sound, a cup of coffee, a stranger. It's like one thing doesn't have any more significance than anything else because it's all boundless. What we call a coffee cup or a cappuccino or a him or a her is actually boundlessness. Freedom appearing as a coffee cup, as a her, as a him.
It sounds to me like it might be good practical advice to ignore non-duality and just crack on being a good construct and being useful.
But there's a possibility that there's nothing in there that can decide that.
But what you create as a construct could be, even if it isn't pure or if it isn't non-dual.
Oh yeah, don't give yourself a head fuck about this. If you want to go and play music, or it's not further away from the ocean or closer to the ocean than meditating in a monastery or whatever other crazy ideas we have. It's all equally significant and equally insignificant.
I don't agree with that, I don't think. Yeah, I mean, there are things going on in the world which are very significant, which we could engage in and represent and, change outcomes. You can look at it from the non-dual perspective, but there's actual, death, for instance, and I realise this transcends everything, but suffering, all of these things.
It is.
Construct's fine, but also of significance in people's lives. So, whether they're a construct or not, engaging in them and trying to move things in a healthier, positive way, that's what I'm talking about.
I think that's brilliant and common sense. And
yeah. But it doesn't feel like you're going to get anywhere with non-dualism. As in, obviously you're going to get everywhere, but at the same time you're going to get nowhere. So just accept it's going nowhere. And then
well, it's not even about acceptance. And in a sense, the me is... that movement is it's almost like the biggest addiction in the room. It's fucking significant, me is.
The likelihood of dissolving that, you know? I mean, I don't know, come at it from a practical angle, I suppose, you know?
Yes, don't take it seriously. Don't take... There isn't a something which is non-duality. In that sense, non-duality and duality are one and the same thing. So, if you're hungry, eat food. It's as simple as that. If something needs to be done, do that. It's not like one thing's spiritual, one thing's not spiritual, or one thing's has more meaning than another thing. So, starting a revolution or changing your baby's nappy, which is sometimes a bit like a revolution, is the same juice.
But the consequences are different. The consequences are different. A revolution may end up with hundreds of thousands of people dead, changing your baby's nappy. You know.
For sure. In that sense, in the story of me, every action is significant and it has a different outcome. There's a different cause and a different effect.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think they're all the same.
Well, in that sense, they are and they aren't. I know it's both very significant and very insignificant. Because it's freedom.
I sometimes think it can be an excuse
For
not engaging and being passive and being high-flying and not engaging with important things. You know, you can, obviously importance is all subjective, but
yeah.
Yeah, I think it can be used as an excuse.
I think for sure, if non-duality is, if there's a sense of what I've seen in so-called spiritual circles, there is this tendency to encourage like a detachment in the character, as if that has some sort of higher development. The spiritual community is very happy to talk about levels and things like that. So that can occur. But this juice, this wetness, is that everyday engagement. Again, there's no rules for this. The character, it could happen to the character and he could fuck off in that sense. Or he could totally engage. It's like, because there's not a something there anymore, in a way the character becomes more full on. He becomes more engaged in that sense, from what I've noticed, in whatever that character is generally interested in. Again, sometimes things can just fall away. And when I was young, I wanted to be a professional footballer. So I went off to Cardiff and I was there. But for my character, the whole sense of being a professional footballer just became meaningless. But I still do. Every time I see football, I want to chase after it. I still love playing football. But the desire to be a professional footballer, that went. It didn't.
What did you do?
I left Cardiff and I lived a bit like a hermit in a caravan on my parents' farm for quite a while. And then I had I was sitting quietly one day and I heard a voice, and it was the voice was a woman's name, and I knew I'd marry her. And it didn't feel strange to me because so much had happened by that time. And I I heard that voice, that name in the street 2 weeks later. So I was like, oh. Early 20s, I can't remember. And so I went up to the lady I heard who said the name. I said, do you know who that person is? I said, do you have a contact number? And I phoned her. And I said, would you like to go out for dinner? And she said, no. I didn't know what she looked like or who she was or anything. I just knew I'd marry her. And months later, she contacted me. And we met, we went for dinner.
How did she know where to find you?
I left my number with her.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was like, if you change your mind, this is my number. You don't know what. She must have thought I was a real nutter. But it was just, that all had fallen away from my character. But, we met up later and got married.
What did you do for a living?
I went into my parents' business, and then my wife and I set up a gallery, which is still going. The marriage isn't.
And kids?
2 boys, 17 and 13. So in that sense, nothing changes. When that energetic story falls away, nothing changes, because there's only this. What was prior to the story, this is another story, and what's after the ending of the story is one and the same thing. It's only to the sense of the me thinks it's very significant, whether I'm in the picture or not in the picture.
But there's an enjoyment, there's still your love of the whatever in anything. It is,
Oh yeah.
So if some of us are suffering, for example, then that's what makes you search, does it not? A lot of the time. Because it doesn't sound like you suffered very much.
Apologise. Whoever suffered the most, can you come up here, please? No, I'm not taking that. No.
It wasn't through suffering that you had that.
No, I was a very happy, very good football player.
Yeah.
And it just came out.
It's a sort of grace, is it not? In a sense. I mean, an effect without a cause. It doesn't seem.
But that's the funny thing about it, is that's the other thing that falls away, is the sense of causation. Because time and space collapse, because it is the story of me. A sense of one thing causing another thing also collapses.
But what I'm saying from my perspective, I hear what you're saying. There's something that knows everything you're saying. Something knows, or
it is known. Yeah.
It's known. But there's a me where I know myself, know that me in time and space. So I touch that. Beyond that, even though I know that hasn't dropped away. Somehow for you it dropped away. It's that dropping away. You can't initiate it. You can know all about it, so you think on all different levels, but you can't initiate that. Boom.
No, because the possibilities, there's nothing in there that can initiate anything.
Exactly. But there's still then, this is the point though for anyone who's a searcher, that you get to that point, that you hear all about it, you've tasted it, you've touched it, you almost know where the limit is to your searching. And then you try, at times you drop it, you stop it, something brings you back. I found myself here tonight, literally. And then I hear you and I know that there's a me here, this character, that comes to a limit. But I suppose the play just goes on. You just keep playing that part.
yeah, in that sense, it carries on until it's.
Do you know what I'm saying though? But from your where you are, that thing, there's some sort of thing that happens where you've crossed over or something's dropped away. So you're in the ocean, in that space, in that. That's what I'm getting. That's what I feel. So what's that shift? Because why are you talking to us? You're only talking to us because we all want to make that shift, don't we? Because we want to be free.
What's being said is the possibility that there's nothing separate in this room that can make a shift.
Yeah. And I understand that.
And there's nothing here that's has made a shift and is in something.
Right.
There is just
what is going on.
life. In a sense, it's quite digital in a way. It's like it can either be the energy can either have a sense of living a life, or they can just be life. And the sense of a something in there, a separate something in there, living a life, is no more. But again, this paradoxical, it's the same thing. It's the same wetness. The meing and the being is one and the same thing. The possibility is that there isn't a separate something in there that's telling the story of me or doing the seeking.
Or having a shift.
Or having a shift.
Yeah.
Actually, there's no shift. There's no enlightenment. There's no freedom in that sense. There's no awakening.
There's our perception of your awareness of the awakening, which is our...
Sorry.
There's our perception of your awareness or your awakening, which is just part of the me story. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes.
Okay.
If there's a sense of a something here, listening to a something there, and it'll be those mischievous senses of thoughts and feelings, creating the story of meaning and of time. But this is in a sense what's is always the case, is what's prior to that movement. It actually is that movement as well. It's not. It's not anything. So in a sense, non-duality or anything else, just stick it in the bin. Life isn't a something in that sense. But then, when there isn't a significant me in the picture, as it were, then it, in a way, everything becomes... it's impossible to describe. It's like, but the smallest thing becomes hugely, boundlessly significant, but for no reason. So life in that sense becomes more full on, because there isn't a me trying to control it or negotiate it to a certain outcome, or because to make itself feel safe, or to make itself feel successful. For the character, it becomes a little bit free and crazy. But in that, there can be so-called responsibility and impossible. The me can never see its own absence. So this is conceptually, it's an impossibility to. It's like trying to capture the air with your hand. You can't do it. Because the something, the me, that energetic sense of being a separate something, having a life, is literally born as time. And what's been said, the possibility is that the only thing in this room is this boundless ocean, appearing as time, appearing as a me, appearing as a thought, as a feeling, appearing as a story, appearing as causation. And that appearance and it both is and isn't. It's not what it appears to be, but the me thinks it is that's the most significant thing in the picture, on which everything else revolves around.
But the likelihood is that most of us will spend our lives as me.
Well, the possibility is that there isn't most of us. I know, I apologise.
But the original point still stands, that for our perspective, we will most likely spend our lives as a construct of me, regardless of what the theory of non-dualism or your understanding of it is. That's the reality, probably, the likelihood of what's going to happen.
Or there's the possibility that there might be a sense that someone's come to this chat, and they might leave knowing that nobody came to this chat, or drinks a cup of coffee tomorrow morning. There could be someone drinking a cup of coffee, or they could just be drinking a cup of coffee tomorrow morning. There's no rules. It's like that ocean again. It's like it can appear that the character with purpose and meaning jumps into the water. For other characters, it literally they get picked up and fucking thrown in with no volition.
What about all of them dancing around on the shore, like putting their feet in a little bit and then legging it back up the beach? I mean, that's going to happen a lot, for most of us.
Yeah. And also what happens as well, that some of those characters, they dance and they trip over their own feet and they fall in. Yeah. Again, there's no rules in that sense.
I'm not looking for rules.
Yeah.
Well, I probably am, but...
Yeah. The possibility is that the only thing is this wetness. And the possibility is there's nothing to get wet. Possibility there's not a separate something. It's just everything. So nothing's excluded. It is the sound of these words, and it is that which is hearing these words. The words have fucking no meaning in that sense. The wetness is not something, not a separate something. it's not a thought, it's not an idea. And it is an idea at the same time. So in that sense, there's nothing that can get closer to it or further away from it. It's just it.
Maybe on that note we should break for a cup of tea.
Yeah, I'm ready for